Hey guys, tonight we're cracking open something more electric than your quarter-life identity meltdown. The actual formula for Coca-Cola back when it wasn't merely a beverage but a legitimately carbonated narcotic available at your neighborhood drugstore. Yeah, seriously. So before you get settled, take a moment to hit that like button and subscribe, but only if you genuinely appreciate what I'm doing here, and leave a comment sharing where you're tuning in from and how much caffeine is required just for basic survival. Now, kill those lights. Fire up a fan for that calming white noise. Maybe silence your phone so your group chat doesn't drag you back into the waking world. Make yourself cozy. Grab yourself a perfectly non-medicinal drink. Let's explore the profound questions. Have you ever considered what it would feel like to stroll into a drugstore, request a boost, and receive a glass of soda packed with enough cocaine to make Freud proud? Would your daily grind be simpler if your morning brew arrived with a dose of pure bliss? Would your holiday gatherings be more bearable if everyone was mildly coked up and puzzled about their sudden urge to purchase additional headwear? Could you handle an era when energy drinks resembled casual chemistry trials and your neighborhood pharmacist was essentially a certified party architect with a mixing bowl and grinding tool? And so, congratulations. You've just awakened in Atlanta, Georgia, during the year 1886. The atmosphere carries faint traces of horses, burning wood, and determination. You're about to create or unintentionally consume something that will alter history and keep your dentist wealthy indefinitely. Best wishes. You awaken in an America still recovering from the Civil War, where nothing beats nostalgia except patent medicine. Water can't be trusted, liquor is discouraged before midday, and everybody's hunting for a miracle remedy, ideally one that tastes less like disappointment and more like advancement. It's the 1880s. Your mattress is uncomfortable, your body aches, and there's an unexplained draft seeping through the wall that you're fairly certain wasn't present yesterday evening. You peer at the climbing sun and attempt to gather sufficient enthusiasm to confront another day in a world operating almost entirely on letdown, wood shavings, and the perpetual promise of newer and better potions. Morning meal choices, hard bread, suspect bacon, and a glass of water that might or might not be plotting to eliminate you within 7 days. Nobody trusts the water. Everybody understands that's where genuine danger begins. Organisms, cholera, and the unmistakable flavour of whatever your upstream companion chose to discard from last evening's activities. Coffee exists naturally, but it's costly, coarse, and mainly for the wealthy or those prepared to chew their morning beverage. So what remains for the average American who's exhausted, worried, and tormented by the spirits of conflicts waged both on and beyond the battlefield? The solution, obviously, is liquid optimism, bottled, labelled, and distributed by gentlemen with elaborate facial hair and suspiciously impressive medical credentials. Patent medicines crowd every pharmacy display, vowing to remedy everything from hair loss to emotional pain. You can't travel a street without stumbling across a placard promoting Professor Hobbs' miracle elixir now with additional opium, or Mrs. Winslow's calming syrup for youngsters and anxious grown-ups. The components are a game of hazardous chance: morphine, liquor, coca leaves, arsenic, and just a hint of peppermint for taste. Because if you're going to risk your well-being, you should at least have fresh breath. Every American craves a high, but nobody wants to acknowledge it. Publicly, folks complain about sin and excess. Privately, they're queuing at the drugstore for their regular dose of stimulation. There's a nationwide conflict between wanting to be virtuous and efficient and secretly wishing for anything that makes Monday feel less like a deliberate march toward death. And then there's the temperance campaign, the nation's biggest, most vocal party pooper. They organise gatherings, distribute literature and lecture whoever's listening about the dangers of alcohol. Beer is forbidden, whiskey is Satan's rinse. But what about a sparkling glass of nerve remedy, immediately prepared at your neighbourhood soda counter? Technically it's not liquor, and that distinction matters entirely. So you enter the crowd at the pharmacy, gripping a coin and a hope. The atmosphere carries scents of ointment, cigar smoke, and a persistent sense of medical uncertainty. The pharmacist, half researcher, half carnival performer, pushes a glass of something dark and fizzing across the surface. It guarantees to eliminate headaches, erase exhaustion, and revive youthful energy. The reality that it's bubbling like a school science project is nearly reassuring. Everyone surrounding you drinks, exhales, and grins. For a fleeting moment, the collective despair evaporates. You can nearly forget about the pains, the obligations, and the reality that nobody truly understands what's in their beverage. It's a magnificent era of uncontrolled excitement, and you're positioned directly within it. In this reality, every challenge has a liquid answer, and nobody's concerned about tomorrow's consequences or tomorrow's complications. You tap your glass, salute to advancement, and conclude that if history intends to be ridiculous, at least it's got a pleasant finish. And that, beyond everything, is how a country discovered to pursue the high one dubious swallow at a time. Introducing John Stith, Pemberton, Civil War survivor, morphine dependent, occasional pharmacist and perpetual disaster catalyst. Picture Walter White with a handlebar mustache and a southern accent, frantically hunting for a painkiller that won't obliterate him. He miscalculates. You are John Pemberton, and your morning begins with a recognizable hurt, the variety of suffering that penetrates your skeleton and makes you desire morphine sprouted on vegetation, or at minimum on shrubs in the garden. You rise each dawn in Columbus, Georgia, still troubled by the conflict, still hunting for something, anything that will assist you through the day without feeling like you're constructed of shattered glass and sorrow. You previously were a cavalry commander charging through gunfire, but currently your greatest conflicts involve a persistent addiction and a pharmacy record that never quite stabilizes. The year is 1885. Your facial hair is magnificent, your vest is marked with questionable brown spots, and your pockets are loaded with plant specimens and incomplete formulas. After a lifetime of observing Americans address their troubles with alcohol and laudanum, you're committed to creating a superior method, a nerve remedy that will allow you to rest at night and confront the daylight without cringing. You desire to be the champion in your personal narrative, but primarily you desire to be suffering free for exceeding 45 straight minutes. So you wear your hat, straighten your necktie, and enter into the realm of late 19th century drugs, a lawless territory where anyone with a grinding tool and mixing bowl can label themselves a chemist, and where the boundary between science and hopeful imagination is inscribed in vanishing ink. Your pharmacy is half research facility, half medicine shop, half reckless guessing contest. And yes, that's excessive halves. But so is everything in the Gilded Era. On your packed shelves are glass containers of unusual powders, piles of patent medicine stickers, and sufficient dried roots and vegetation to launch a botanist's feverish hallucination. The atmosphere is dense with the aroma of menthol, turpentine, and hopelessness. Patrons shuffle inside with headaches, emotional wounds, and a frantic hope for something different. Some require a sleeping aid, some desire a stimulant, some simply appreciate the performance. You're a pharmacist, but you're simultaneously an entertainer, and today's performance is how numerous ingredients can we combine before something detonates. But your suffering is the genuine catalyst. After a blade injury to the torso in the conflict, you were given morphine at the period considered safer than liquor and more dignified than yelling into a cushion. Decades afterward, you're imprisoned by the identical thing that was intended to liberate you. So you experiment and you combine, hoping you'll discover something that functions for you. And, if you're fortunate, can be distributed to the population as a remedy for whatever troubles them. That's how you find coca leaves transported entirely from Peru, preferred by Andean workers for their endurance and by European physicians for their uplifting qualities. And then there's the African cola nut, a caffeine-loaded wonder so harsh you're persuaded only the genuinely hopeless would ever consume it unprocessed. Fortunately, America is packed with the genuinely hopeless. Your initial mixtures are bold. Sometimes they bubble, sometimes they transform alarming shades of emerald. Sometimes they strike you sideways for a solid 60 minutes. Your journals are a combination of medical observations and personal entries. Included double the cola today. Still sense like my consciousness is departing my frame. It's science. If you characterize science as attempting not to harm yourself in the chase of excellence, companions and associates think you're unusual, potentially brilliant, and absolutely not to be abandoned with the liquor storage. Your animals observe cautiously from the entrance, deeply aware that every mixture could conclude with a minor blaze. Still, you continue, because if America is parched for a high, you are absolutely dehydrated. In the conclusion, John Pemberton isn't merely a pharmacist. He's the personification of the American tendency to self-treat and label it progress. Motivated by suffering, troubled by the history and persistently hopeful, you pursue a remedy for yourself and trip into a formula that will eventually transform the planet. For the moment, it's just you, your containers, and a mind packed with aspirations. Plus, let's be frank, a hint amount of cocaine. This is how myths begin, with the injured gentleman in a crowded shop, combining suffering and hope into a glass and tasting gradually to observe what occurs next. Let's be frank. In late 19th century America, your neighborhood pharmacy isn't merely a location for cough syrup and bandages. It's the social command center, the community's informal counseling office, and more significantly, the safest location in town to become slightly modified without increasing the neighbor's suspicions. You enter aching for comfort, and the chime on the entrance rings like the beginning of an expedition. There's a subtle scent of licorice, coal smoke, and a trace of antiseptic that never fully masks up the fundamental fragrance of hopelessness and punishment. Pipe tobacco. Enter inside. Shelves overwhelm the walls loaded with glass containers of every shade and sticker, stimulating liniment, herbal soothing drops, and if you search deep enough, witch hazel. Excellent for everything, terrible for absolutely nothing. The pharmacist stands beyond the surface like a bartender with a medical permit, elegant, spectacled, and brandishing a long-handled spoon like he intends action. He's part researcher, part entertainer, and part neighborhood secret guardian. Individuals don't merely arrive here for medication, they arrive for companionship, for information, for an excuse to escape the persistent bone-rattling monotony of 19th century afternoons. The waiting space is packed with mismatched seats and wooden benches smoothed by years of nervous fidgeting. Women murmur behind handkerchiefs, gentlemen exchange tales of illnesses both genuine and exaggerated, and every youngster in town watches the candy container with barely restrained desire. If you require guidance on a rash, a forgotten love, or the optimal way to preserve potatoes for winter, this is where you travel. Your pharmacist has witnessed it all and likely created some of it. The primary attraction is the soda fountain, shining brass marble surface, and a series of taps more enigmatic than the city's water distribution. Nobody understands exactly what's in each spigot, but everyone has a preference. It's the sole bar in town where youngsters are not only permitted but motivated to approach and request something powerful, by which we indicate packed with caffeine and syrups that destroy your teeth before you even reach adolescence. Request a phosphate, and the pharmacist seizes a glass with a rehearsed flourish, pouring in syrups from marked containers. Cherry, sarsaparilla, lemon, and naturally, the fresh house. Coca-Cola. He strikes the soda lever and a hiss of carbonated water occupies the glass, bubbles ascending like optimistic thoughts. He stirs samples, includes a bit more syrup for fortune, and pushes it across the surface. You consume a swallow. It's sweet, cold, and almost definitely illegal in 5 European nations. The taste is wild, stimulating, and there's an aftertaste of expedition or possibly regret. In this period, nobody truly trusts water, and everyone is doubtful of alcohol unless it's concealed inside a medicinal remedy and recommended by someone in a vest. The pharmacy is the exception. It's where you can encounter your companions for a beverage at midday, label it a wellness drink, and then fault the pharmacist if you begin seeing duplicates. There's a queue of townsfolk at all times, factory labourers on pause, grandmothers in bonnets, and travelling merchants with more tales than logic. The discussion drifts from neighbourhood scandals, who's arguing with whom, to nationwide occurrences. Are we still at conflict with anyone? To the fresh miracle beverage that's got everyone energised in the corner. Two aged gentlemen debate about which potion healed their lumbago quicker, and a disinterested teenager considers whether to attempt the electric nerve phosphate or simply take another licorice stick and escape for it. And at the middle of it all, the pharmacist, combining, listening, providing guidance that is equal portions wisdom and reckless speculation. He'll suggest a remedy for your anxiety, a syrup for your cough, and a candy for your difficulties. You depart with a paper container packed with hope, a mouthful of sweetness, and the feeling that somehow the planet is just a bit more controllable. Because in this magnificent fizzing period, the pharmacy isn't merely a store, it's a refuge, a location where life's pains are calmed, if only for an afternoon, with a bit sugar, a bit medicine, and a lot of companionship. And as the sun descends, you'll return. Because the illumination is superior, the beverages are safer, and the bartender never requests for your age. You discover yourself positioned in the rear room of an 1880s pharmacy, encircled by wooden containers stamped with foreign languages, their contents smelling suspiciously like both the jungle and the bottom of a Victorian gymnasium sock. There on the cluttered surface sits a pile of glossy deep emerald coca leaves, recently transported from South America, and a sack of cola nuts, solid as marbles and twice as frightening. This is not your standard baking trial. This is the origin narrative of the planet's first multitasking energy beverage, constructed from plants that have zero intention of permitting anyone rest. Let's begin with the coca leaf. It's been consumed by Andean labourers for centuries, valued for its unusual ability to transform a day of harsh labour into a tolerable, if somewhat manic, walk up a mountain. You, an inquisitive pharmacist or a especially ambitious amateur, are directed by your recent medical publications that coca will revive vitality, eliminate fatigue, and enhance mental sharpness. In reality, it's the 19th century equivalent of triple espresso, except it simultaneously arrives with a portion of legal cocaine. You inhale the leaves, half anticipating enlightenment and half anticipating your nasal hairs to detach. The fragrance is natural, somewhat sweet and coloured with a hint of danger, like recently cut grass with a criminal history. In South America, indigenous individuals consume the leaves, combining them with lime or ash, and survive 12-hour shifts herding llamas or racing up hills that would make a stairmaster cry. In America, you're intended to soak the leaves in alcohol and wish for the optimal. The resulting extract is sharp, harsh, and just a bit numbing on the tongue. That final bit is a hint. If your face becomes numb, you're likely doing pharmacy correctly, 1880s fashion. Next arrives the cola nut. Indigenous to the deep forests of West Africa, it's the secret component in any formula that promises to provide stimulation. The nuts are tough, glossy, and smell vaguely like a leather boot that endured a humid summer. For generations, cola nuts have been utilised in African communities to respect guests, energise ceremonies, and crucially, maintain people alert through the longest of village gatherings. When consumed, unprocessed cola nuts are harsh enough to make your teeth ponder early departure, but they're packed with caffeine, nature's original wake-up call. Now back in your active pharmacy, you've got both these wonders displayed like valuable gems. This is where the magic and a bit of careless science starts. You slice, grind, soak and combine. Every mixture is an expedition, every taste trial a negotiation between your determination and your survival sense. It's not sufficient for your remedy to awaken people. It has to taste somewhat acceptable too. Otherwise, patrons will transfer their business and their nervous systems elsewhere. Merge coca extract with cola nut infusion, and you've got yourself the Victorian solution to what if coffee and a Red Bull had a child and then gave it a personality condition. The resulting mixture is a thick, dark syrup that tastes like caramelized medicine with a secret existence. Include sugar, lots of sugar, and you can nearly convince yourself this is a beverage, not a challenge. You ponder if you're a medical pioneer or merely one more American enthusiastically speculating at science. The sole thing everyone can consent on is, after a glass of this mixture, the city feels more vibrant, the streets more active, and the planet a lot quicker. Mothers dispatch their children to retrieve that fresh, invigorating remedy, and the town's factory labourers develop a fresh appreciation for overtime. In these years, there are no caution stickers, no limitations, just the confident promise of advancement transported in bulk, soaked in mystery and mixed into your regular routine. You container the mixture, attach a sticker that suggests both the Amazon and the Congo, and pray the government never poses too numerous questions. The high, after all, is the complete objective. You've just encountered America's fresh favourite pair, and they are about to maintain you and the complete country alert for the next 100 years. It's late, you're exhausted, and your pharmacy smells like a combination between a greenhouse, a candy establishment, and a minor explosion at a chemistry facility. You are John Pemberton, injured, committed, and a bit frantic. You've spent weeks combining boiling and taste-testing combinations of roots, barks, spices, syrups, and whatever's remaining from the previous failed miracle remedy. Your fingers are marked, your tongue is numb, and your journal reads like the diary of an optimistic but somewhat unhinged wizard. The reality is, you're not truly following a strategy. You're improvising a bit like a jazz performer. If jazz performers functioned exclusively in bitters, narcotics, and caramel tinting. Some mornings the trials go smoothly. Other mornings not so much. The syrup is excessively thin, or the taste is somewhere between medicinal regret and why is this spicy, but you persist because that's what pioneers do, and also because your alternative is a lifetime of distributing foot powder and debating with patrons about the expense of liniment. On the surface is a series of glass vials, each one containing the residue of previous night's attempt. There's an essence of coca, a splash of cola nut, and a parade of additional ingredients: damiana, nutmeg, cinnamon, vanilla bean, and a mysterious trickle of alcohol. Sometimes you question if you're making a beverage or a mixture to summon friendly spirits. But hope springs perpetual, and besides, every magnificent formula starts with an error or three. You take another attempt at it, this occasion. More sugar. America adores sugar, and so do you, especially when it conceals the more questionable notes of herbal expedition. A few drops of citric acid for brightness, lemon oil for a cheerful southern completion, and just the smallest whisper of essential oils whose names you can barely articulate but which sound, honestly, delicious. You stir the bubbling syrup, hoping that you don't unintentionally create a fresh category of household cleaning substance. But the breakthrough doesn't arrive from careful strategy. It arrives from disorder. Maybe you're interrupted by a patron. Maybe you sneeze and pour in twice as much syrup. Maybe the dog topples over a beaker. All you understand is that today's mixture is different. Darker, richer, sweeter, with a smell that states, this is not cough medicine. This is something fresh. You pour a bit into a glass and cover it with cold, fizzing soda water. The bubbles race to the surface, and the room occupies with a caramel spice scent that's a lot less menacing than your previous dozen attempts. You consume a swallow. It's sweet, sharp, refreshing, and it makes your head buzz in the optimal possible way. It's not merely good, it's thrilling. You hand a glass to your assistant who drinks, blinks, and immediately requests for more. The pharmacist across town attempts it, then spends the afternoon reorganizing his complete store by shade and alphabet. Information spreads quickly. There's something fresh at Jacob's Pharmacy, and it tastes like advancement, fortune, and just a trace of legal mischief. Word of mouth accomplishes what advertising can't. Individuals wander inside for a headache remedy and depart, informing their companions about the delicious nerve remedy. Some arrive for the stimulant. Some merely want to witness what all the excitement is about. Nobody requests what's in it. Nobody minds. It's cold, it's sweet, and it makes even the worst Tuesday feel like a very tolerable Thursday. That's the genuine brilliance of Coca-Cola. It wasn't born of careful strategy or medical certainty. It was the chaotic, bubbling offspring of improvisation, accident, and the universal human desire to feel just a bit better. By the stroke of midnight, you've scratched out your formula, emptied the final pour, and collapsed back in your chair, bone-tired but electric. You're clueless that you've just built something massive. The world doesn't always shift according to some master plan. Sometimes it transforms when you're backed into a corner and just reckless enough to attempt one last insane combination. Tonight, you're raising a glass to your own creation, and come morning, you'll be making legends, one bubbly serving at a time. The Atlanta afternoon is scorching. Outside, the atmosphere is heavy with horse stench, burning coal, and the unmistakable scent of American hustle. Inside this drugstore, it's cooler, shadows dancing, alive with constant carbonation. You approach the marble bar and step into a realm where the soda fountain transcends machinery, becoming something sacred, and the fountain operator behind it serves as both holy man and showman, ready to hand you a tumbler of liquid possibility. You settle onto a worn wooden seat, forearms resting on the counter, absorbing your surroundings. The fountain gleams like treasure, all brass fixtures, ceramic details and burnished timber, with glass containers of syrup arranged like precious stones. Each vessel contains its own essence: vanilla, cherry, sarsaparilla, lemon phosphate, and now something completely unprecedented: the puzzling, mesmerizing Coca-Cola. Patrons murmur among themselves. The entrance bell chimes, and nothing cuts through the chatter quite like the sound of fizzing, bubbling carbonation spraying from silver spouts into frosted tumblers. The fountain operator, barely out of boyhood, sporting a paper cap tilted just so, commands this territory. He operates with the flair of a big-top master and the velocity of someone who's clearly taste-tested every extract within reach. Each request becomes a miniature production. When you order the special stuff, he shoots you a knowing look, angles the Coke container and watches the syrup stream into your tumbler. He hits it with pressurized water, whips it together with expert precision and delivers your beverage across the marble surface with dramatic style that announces, absolutely, this is the highlight of your entire week. You take that initial taste. The carbonation pops across your palate. The sweetness hits hard. Then there's something additional. A tingling in your gums, a sensation of potential vibrating through your skeleton. Suddenly you're alert, moderately euphoric, and halfway convinced you could run 26 miles or finally tackle that roof work. There's an undercurrent of excitement in the atmosphere. It feels like the universe is wide open, and you'll probably recall most of what happens next. Surrounding you, the clientele is wonderfully varied. Businessmen wrapped in seersucker, mothers dressed in crisp cotton, youngsters with sugar-coated fingers and frenzied expressions, an exhausted reverend, an optimistic educator. The soda fountain welcomes everyone equally. It's the destination for anybody seeking escape from the brutal heat and the burden of everyday existence. Even the town lawman drops in, headwear in hand, just to consume a wellness drink and catch up on local whispers. The beverages are affordable, the attention is quick, and the atmosphere is relaxed. No bookings required, no doorman stationed, and zero judgment if you return multiple times before sunset. Some people nurse their sodas deliberately, relishing every chilled swallow. Others drain theirs immediately and request another before the bubbles have settled. It's more than refreshment. It's a phenomenon, a ceremony, an opportunity to feel energized and part of something in an era still lacking climate control or dependable postal delivery. For children, the soda fountain represents pure enchantment. It's their closest approximation to a theme park. except the admission costs 5 cents and the star attraction arrives in glassware. They squeal, slurp, and challenge each other to request extra syrup. For grown-ups, it's permission to stop, exchange gossip, and temporarily forget that the water supply outside might still transmit disease. As daylight fades toward dusk, the soda fountain remains packed. Sweethearts rendezvous for shared straws and a touch of small-town intrigue. The pharmacist checks in periodically just to confirm the fountain operator isn't dispensing the high-potency blend. Everyone departs with elevated blood sugar, a subtle buzz, and the conviction that for just a handful of minutes, they've visited the single location in the nation where happiness is calculated in fluid ounces and delivered over ice. Tomorrow you'll return, because nothing compares to the soda fountain's mystery, sweet and entirely within the bounds of law. Let's establish something clearly. If you're moving through America during the closing decades of the 19th century, odds are statistically decent you're slightly cocaine-enhanced at this very moment. Don't feel ashamed. Your physician is too, along with your dentist, probably your clergyman as well. Because in this glorious age of miracle remedies, cocaine occupies a space less as forbidden narcotic and more as fashionable domestic ingredient. The variety that gets added to nearly everything and prescribed for virtually everyone. You awaken feeling sluggish, perhaps somewhat down. Is it anxiety, exhaustion, depression? Wonderful news, there's a solution for that. And it almost certainly contains cocaine. Visit any reputable drugstore and you'll discover a paradise of vibrant containers, each guaranteeing wonders in elaborate old-fashioned lettering. There are cocaine toothache remedies for youngsters because why shouldn't babies' vocabulary include another round? Cocaine tablets for irritated throats and even cocaine-laced French coca wine for the refined imbiber seeking to complement fine vintage with absolute self-assurance. Why does cocaine appear everywhere? Easy, nobody's prohibited it yet. Actually, the medical community adores it. Your doctor writes prescriptions for conditions ranging from allergies to female troubles. If you're nervous, melancholy, understimulated, fatigued, coughing, sneezing, or simply failing to shine at social gatherings, there's a cocaine-infused treatment bearing your identity. The advertisements declare endorsed by medical professionals and everyone simply accepts it. Because physicians in that era possess roughly equivalent credibility as contemporary internet searches. Whatever they claim must be accurate. Cocaine isn't merely permitted, it's celebrated. It's the superfood of the Victorian age, the health craze nobody challenges. You can purchase it wholesale from mail-order catalogues, positioned right between your new undergarment and a sturdy garden tool. Even the Queen's personal doctor is rumoured to indulge. Sigmund Freud, civilization's most prominent mind analyst, cherishes the substance so intensely he authors papers praising it and distributes enthusiastic portions to his colleagues. Sample this, he suggests, trembling in his seat. It's beneficial for absolutely everything, and for several magnificent, jittery years, society trusts him. Parents add cocaine solution to their children's cough syrup, primarily so the kids will cease hacking and begin reciting their ABCs at double velocity. There are even cocaine-infused chewing products, perfect for extended afternoons, midnight cramming, or your child's inaugural academic competition. If your infant is teething, apply a small amount to the gums. Shortly everyone's grinning, or at minimum wide-eyed and strangely silent. It's not confined to pharmaceuticals either. Cocaine is appearing in consumables, wines and tonics. The French are importing coca leaf wine by the cask. American drink mixers are adding just a splash into their concoctions. Pharmacists are blending it into solutions marketed as dependable cognitive enhancers. Nobody's measuring portions. The only adverse effect anyone acknowledges is continuous productivity. People knit quicker, compose longer, travel farther. You feel so capable you might even purchase a second undergarment purely for enjoyment. Naturally, not everyone is persuaded. Some traditional preachers grumble about artificial enthusiasm. A handful of doctors, somewhat ahead of their time, observe their patients are speaking exceptionally rapidly and resting very infrequently. But most individuals disregard these trivial observations. After all, how harmful can something be if it arrives in a decorative container featuring an image of a beaming youngster? The actual puzzle isn't why cocaine is ubiquitous. It's how much time will pass before anyone recognizes the drawbacks. For the present, though, America's favorite component is optimism, packaged and distributed with showmanship. Your dentist provides cocaine for dental discomfort. Your pharmacist supplies it for sadness. Your preferred soda fountain incorporates it for excitement. In an era preceding cautionary labels, everyone is somewhat superhuman, somewhat restless, and far more inclined to scrub their residence past midnight. And you? You simply desired a boost. Instead, you received a chemical transformation one measured dose at a time. Before you ever sampled Coca-Cola, you witnessed it constantly. Splashed across printed notices, illustrated on barn exteriors and announced from drugstore displays like a circus promoter with advanced degrees in compelling fabrication. If you inhabited 1886 Atlanta, you couldn't travel a city block without encountering an advertisement guaranteeing the cerebral beverage and abstinence drink that would revitalize the physique and energize the consciousness. It was an epoch when nobody trusted their water supply. Everyone doubted their physician, and nearly everyone invested complete confidence in a poster with sufficient decorative typography. The promotion wasn't understated. Forget modern influencer strategies and social media tags. This was combat by printing press and paintbrush. Coca-Cola was marketed as the supreme wellness tonic, a miraculous solution for headaches, exhaustion, indigestion, nerve pain, and the cryptic condition called spring fever, which honestly might simply have been allergies and existential crisis. You didn't merely consume Coca-Cola. You absorbed advancement, contemporary living, and the prospect that your dullest weekday could transform into something worth recounting. And the endorsements. The initial advertisements guaranteed it would resolve everything excluding your matrimonial issues. And even then, you might worry less about your partner's nocturnal noises. Correspondence flooded in from pleased consumers declaring that one serving of Coca-Cola eliminated their headaches, steadied their anxiety, and shifted their perspective from hopeless to moderately elated. If you accepted the marketing, Coca-Cola wasn't just a drink. It was a mentor, a counselor, and a dependable caretaker, all for 5 pennies per serving. But beneath every dramatic assertion was a clever, calculated suggestion. Certainly it eliminates weariness. Certainly it's a delicious, refreshing, stimulating drink. But the genuine mystery was displayed right in the technical details, Coca and Cola. The title revealed everything, but the advertisements chose to sidestep the topic directly. Contains the beneficial tonic and neurological stimulant characteristics of the coca plant and cola nuts. This is a legitimate stimulant blend with sweetener, flavoring, and pleasant additions, plus a little extra that will motivate you to organize your clothing drawer at dawn. The true brilliance, however, was marketing Coca-Cola as an abstinence beverage. The Temperance Crusade was actively campaigning, condemning liquor, closing taverns, and waging battle against intoxication. Alcohol represented corruption, but Coca-Cola, that was a loophole substantial enough to accommodate a celebration through. Here was a beverage you could consume publicly, professionally, or even at religious instruction without attracting suspicion. It was the respectable stimulant, the wholesome buzz. Parents approved of it. Preachers signalled acceptance. Your neighbourhood pharmacist labelled it energizing with complete sincerity and distributed more servings daily than most saloons managed weekly. Before long, drugstores installed fresh advertisements. Consume Coca-Cola, the most extraordinary drink on earth. Counterworkers wore badges, registers chimed constantly, and fountain operators perfected their technique like championship contenders. Each serving was a 5-cent opportunity for an improved existence, or at minimum an improved afternoon, and every taste included a complimentary portion of optimism. The excitement expanded. Personal recommendations accomplished what even the most theatrical print advertisement couldn't. Tales circulated of incredible recoveries, late-night efficiency, and unexpected domestic organisation. Neighbours competed over who could consume the greatest quantity before midday. If you disliked Coca-Cola, you were either dishonest or suspected of being somewhat peculiar. Revenue skyrocketed. The metropolis thrummed with energy. Even individuals who typically resisted trends found themselves grabbing the distinctive tumbler just to understand the commotion. Naturally, the boundary between wellness tonic and exaggeration was as unclear as a caffeine surge past midnight. Was it a miraculous remedy, or just sweetened carbonation and optimism, with a jolt of legally questionable content in 1886? Nobody minded. The posters guaranteed, the soda fountain provided, and you departed the drugstore feeling somewhat more hopeful and considerably more awake. Who requires evidence when you've got promotion this effective? Step through the hinged entrance of your community pharmacy, and you're not simply entering a location that distributes soap and pain relievers. You're accessing the hidden workshop of the 19th century's most undervalued creative masters, the pharmacists. Certainly you imagine them currently as the individuals who diplomatically overlook your awkward prescription requirements at chain drugstores. But in the 1880s, these were the original beverage artists, shaking, blending and improvising in an untamed frontier of syrups, powders and substances that bubbled and radiated mysteriously. Behind the display stands a gentleman in an immaculate white jacket, groomed moustache gleaming, sleeves pushed up like he's preparing to confront a bear, or at minimum a resistant syrup dispenser. He recognizes every affliction in the community, every rumor worth repeating, and more scientific knowledge than a contemporary energy beverage facility. His hands maintain constant motion, crushing a powder, calculating a droplet, adding a touch of something amber from an enigmatic container marked elixir of life. Presumably, he's part researcher, part mixologist, and part community confidant. You arrive with a headache and the uncertain feeling that your existence requires slightly more stimulation. He listens seriously, acknowledges, and then springs into motion. No prescription containers here. He's preparing you something personalized with a formula that exists solely in his memory and may never be duplicated. He presents you a tumbler. The liquid surface shimmers. There's a citrus garnish for presentation, and somewhere in the mixture an alarming quantity of sweetener and potentially a pharmaceutical component the authorities haven't discovered yet. Patrons congregate, some seeking relief, some seeking conversation, and a few purely for the entertainment. The soda fountain behind the display is the focal point, a shrine of valves, mechanisms, glass containers, and unusual aromas. The pharmacist, or fountain operator if you're being casual, manipulates it with the skill of a keyboard virtuoso. He presents a dozen varieties, all of them syrupy and somewhat questionable, but the featured offering is Coca-Cola. He dispenses, blends and transmits tumbler after tumbler across the display, each one a small marvel of chemistry and absolute trust. But he's not exclusively distributing soft beverages. This is a solo wellness revolution. Wellness in that you feel improved instantly. Ramifications be ignored. The pharmacy shelving displays tinctures guaranteeing to restore female vitality, calm nervous conditions, or remedy whatever troubles you. Components include everything from coca plants to opium, spirits, mint and items marked botanical mystery, which you suspect is merely herbs. But it's functioning, so who questions it? Community members trust him beyond any physician. After all, the pharmacist is present daily, prepared to listen and eager to experiment. If the initial syrup doesn't heal you, he'll attempt a different one tomorrow. There's no regulatory agency, no documentation, and absolutely no legal protection. If you're feeling adventurous, you can even request something additional. He'll signal knowingly, add extra syrup, perhaps include a mysterious tincture, and dispatch you through the entrance buzzing with positive energy and slight disorientation. And it's not exclusively medicine he provides. Existence guidance, relationship counselling, child-rearing suggestions, commercial ventures, consider beekeeping, and the sporadic conspiracy theory about what's genuinely in the politician's tonic. If you remain sufficiently long, You'll discover more confidential information than the local clergyman, and you'll be pledged to discretion by the second serving. Children arrive for a reward, adults for a respite, and the senior citizens just to discover what's current. The pharmacy is partially social establishment, partially laboratory, partially barely supervised experiment. Every beverage, every remedy, every adventurous new syrup demonstrates the pharmacist's innovation, positivity, and complete rejection of mundane drinks. So next occasion you visit a drugstore, remember it was formerly a paradise for the nation's most courageous beverage artists. And for a brief, sparkling period in American Chronicle, your community pharmacist was the only mixologist you genuinely required. Welcome to Atlanta, Georgia, approximately 1886, a metropolis vibrant with locomotives, aspiration, and a remarkable disregard for regulatory supervision. You arrive via railroad, welcomed by a skyline of industrial chimneys, wooden structures, and partially texturized ones. Atlanta is a location where wealth materializes overnight, where New South confidence crashes into Reconstruction circumstances, and where nobody examines the technical specifications unless they're on a container guaranteeing instant relief from contemporary difficulties. Travel down Peachtree Street and you'll observe everything. Financiers in pristine new attire, horse-drawn vehicles avoiding wandering animals, and merchants selling everything from roasted legumes to miraculous remedies. The metropolis vibrates with an agitation that can't be attributed to caffeine exclusively, though as you'll shortly discover, it definitely contributes. Atlanta in the 1880s is an experimental ground for creation, transformation, and the casual violation of any regulation that hasn't been established yet. Everything is negotiable, including the classification of medicine. Drugstores emerge on every intersection, distributing elixirs with designations like Dr. Blount's invigorating syrup and Professor Todd's reliable tonic. The contents are a puzzle, but the packaging is absolute artistry. Terms like vitalizing, invigorating, and botanical remedy displayed in flowing Victorian lettering. If you can spell it elaborately, you can distribute it lawfully. Regulations? Not present, not currently. As long as you remit your taxes and maintain the spelling ornate, Atlanta's civic leaders ignore it. The metropolis is vibrant with vitality, occasionally organic, occasionally imported in containers marked for therapeutic use exclusively. This is a community constructed on gamble and profit. Individuals move rapidly, communicate rapidly, and thanks to the latest sensation at the soda fountain, reason even faster. There's a continuous procession of sellers, creators, charlatans, and visionaries, all persuaded they'll become the next sensation. You can identify the recent arrivals by their enthusiasm and the manner they still attempt to navigate the street without caution. And while the metropolis's authorities deliver inspiring addresses about structure and advancement, the genuine authority is established at the soda fountain and behind the pharmacist's display. The principles: if it generates revenue, it persists. If it tastes pleasant, it's medicine. If it produces any sensation, anything whatsoever, it becomes an immediate phenomenon. Coca-Cola integrates perfectly. Nobody challenges a syrup that professes to eliminate headaches and hangovers as long as it maintains the customers returning for additional. The metropolis's prominent medical authorities are as inclined to support it as they are to privately finance it. Atlanta's vitality is transmissible. There are new manufacturing facilities appearing weekly, and the population expands faster than you can articulate municipal infrastructure. There's an unlimited hunger for innovation, and nobody possesses time for reconsidering. The publications herald every creation as the wonder of the contemporary era, whether it's a typing machine, a telephone, or a marginally enhanced facial hair product. Nobody understands if the future will succeed, but everyone is determined to be present when it materializes. Even the climate is ambitious, warmer than it should be, more precipitation when it shouldn't be, and always full of unpredictability. The metropolis is equal portions southern hospitality and relentless energy, a location where yesterday's catastrophe transforms into today's intelligent marketing approach. Conflagration, reconstruct, inundation, relocate, controversy, rebrand. Atlanta's unofficial declaration if initially you don't accomplish, print new packaging. By the time evening arrives, gas illumination flickers alive and the metropolis radiates with a sensation of prospect. Drugstores remain operational. The soda fountains are still hissing, and someone somewhere is experimenting with the next magnificent concoction. In Atlanta, the regulations are flexible, the vocabulary is elaborate, and, as long as you spell it with sufficient decoration, even the most extreme concept is acceptable. So take a position at the display, request something with a designation you can scarcely articulate, and celebrate to a metropolis where everything is achievable and almost nothing is prohibited. You step outside into the brilliant, chaotic Atlanta sunlight, and you're instantly welcomed by a procession of hand-illustrated signs, each one more hopeful than the previous. Sample Dr. Smiley's Liver Lightning, Professor Pepper's Asthma Annihilator, Mrs. Wellborn's Marvellous Mother's Mixture. This is not a medical quarter. It's a hybrid between a marketplace and a late-night television commercial. Welcome to the untamed realm of patent medicines, where every container guarantees optimism and provides, if nothing else, an unforgettable afternoon. Your selections are limitless. If your joints discomfort, there's Pain Begone Tonic, a syrup the shade of disappointment. If you cannot rest, Dr. Goodnight's Nerve Elixir professes to render you unconscious so rapidly you'll awaken next week, questioning what year it is. For the driven, Vim and Vigor wine boasts enhanced endurance, improved self-assurance, and if the technical specifications are to be accepted, the capacity to grapple bears. Outcomes may fluctuate. The optimal part? Nobody is obligated to reveal what's genuinely in any of these magical mixtures. You explore the corridors of your community pharmacy, or more accurately, the temporary wagon. Beyond the fairground, containers sparkle in the sunlight, sealed and secured with a small paper decoration for additional credibility. Some even arrive in specialized boxes decorated with illustrations of robust-appearing children and impossibly content grandmothers. There are endorsements from individuals who profess to have been healed of general masculine malaise, the vapors, or spontaneous melancholy, afflictions that may or may not be legitimate but definitely sound remarkable when you mention them at religious services. The reality is, patent medicines represent a regulatory gap so massive you could fit an entire carnival through it. No patents needed, no evidence of effectiveness, and the FDA doesn't exist yet. Dream up a memorable name, stick an image of a trustworthy physician on the packaging, and combine some alcohol, opium, cocaine, chloroform, peppermint, or exotic herbs, and you've created merchandise. Safety protocols mean sampling a bit and observing whether it causes immediate death. If not, congratulations, it's market ready. Peddlers, occasionally labelled medicine men or professional dreamers, journey between settlements with carriages, entertainment, and abundant self-assurance. They establish themselves in public squares, proclaim the newest wonder cure, and distribute complimentary samples to anyone insufficiently quick to flee. You purchase a container because your acquaintance insists it eliminated his back pain, and honestly, following yesterday's meal, you're willing to believe anything. Naturally, adverse reactions remain unknown, which adds to the excitement. If you're suddenly laughing hysterically during the minister's address, it's likely the gentle stimulant in your breakfast elixir. If you've misplaced your footwear, attribute it to healing botanicals. Few people probe too deeply. When something genuinely functions, it achieves legendary status. When it fails, you simply await the next travelling vendor's arrival. Patent remedies aren't exclusively human. Formulas exist for horses, canines, and poultry. Uncle Bob's Poultry Potion purports to boost egg-laying and improve your chicken's temperament. Should you accidentally consume it yourself, you might develop cravings for invertebrates and newfound respect for Dawn. The sheer selection is staggering. Some overflow with sugar and spirits engineered to provide instant gratification. Others taste so harsh you question whether discomfort is therapeutic. Young ones receive special syrups fortified with morphine, while seniors are urged to strengthen their vitality with anything packaged attractively. The chaotic realm of patent remedies resembles a festival of aspiration, publicity, and elevated moods, often quite literally. You surrender your coin, release the stopper, and take a gulp, uncertain of the contents but absolutely convinced you're participating in America's grandest experiment. During this period, that's simply medical practice. The moment has arrived. It's Atlanta, 1886, and you're preparing for your initial taste of the city's most discussed mixture. Jacob's Pharmacy is alive, not merely with patrons, but with an energy that emerges when something genuinely novel is poised to transform everyone's day. You enter with others, gripping a nickel and that cautious optimism born from years of testing questionable remedies and surviving nearly all of them. The bar displays glassware, and beyond it stands the pharmacist, cuffs folded, moustache quivering with excitement. He dispenses a dark, viscous liquid from a stubby brown container marked Coca-Cola Syrup, Dr. Pemberton's creation. You observe as he introduces chilled carbonated water from the brass spout, the effervescence ascending with infectious enthusiasm. He agitates the blend vigorously, presents the glass, and anticipates reactions ranging from fainting to complaints to possible transcendence. You take your initial sip. The experience is instantaneous, a jolt of cold, an explosion of sweetness, and an unusual tingling beginning at your tongue's tip and travelling to wherever your brain stores your identity. The taste defies comparison. It surpasses root beer in richness, exceeds sarsaparilla in mystery, and possesses a subtle sharpness suggesting what precisely? Citrus, spice, drive. You're undecided. You simply crave more. Surrounding you, the space pauses, awaiting someone's verdict. An aged woman sips carefully, then beams in a manner suggesting she's considering starting a musical ensemble. A weary clerk, anticipating disappointment, illuminates like holiday decorations. A youngster laughs so intensely he nearly loses his glass. Nobody seems certain of the ingredients, yet everyone concurs it doesn't resemble medicine. It resembles tomorrow, and perhaps slightly resembles mischief. The responses are swift and spreading. Patrons request additional servings. Information travels beyond the establishment's boundaries. Shortly, speculation runs rampant. There's a novel beverage available, and it doesn't merely address headaches. It might remedy your general Monday malaise. You catch someone saying they improved before finishing their portion. Another claims unprecedented rest quality, though admitting no sleep attempts since their third serving. Even the pharmacist appears astonished. He anticipated doubt, grievances, perhaps theatrical coughing or whispered legal threats. Instead, he observes a queue extending outdoors and an immediate pressing need for additional glassware. Nobody demands reimbursement. Nobody expels it. Instead, you detect amusement, observe happiness, and witness the unusual phenomenon of strangers complimenting each other's new preferred refreshment. Several doubters remain. One gentleman examines his glass dubiously, rotates it like premium wine, and eventually sips. His expression transforms, and he acknowledges approval. Others inquire about ingredients, but answers stay ambiguous. Confidential components, unusual tastes, slight enchantment. Truthfully, nobody actually understands, and nobody particularly minds. For the first extended period, you're consuming something that doesn't resemble a challenge or punishment. The gathering persists, discussions emerge, and Jacob's Pharmacy transforms into the community's informal meeting place. Even the sourest patrons depart with bottles or at minimum anecdotes. You comprehend that Coca-Cola transcends mere refreshment. It's an atmosphere, a phenomenon, a collective mystery among you and every curious individual in Atlanta. And stepping back into Peachtree Street's warmth, you inevitably smile. You've experienced something remarkable, and regardless of outcome, you're prepared for another serving. You're positioned behind Jacob's pharmacy counter, cuffs rolled, hands adhesive, and expression perpetually anticipatory. The storage area overflows with syrup containers, citrus rinds, measuring implements, and the faint aroma of botanical enterprise. Welcome to the subsequent phase of the Coca-Cola venture, where each glass constitutes a modest marvel of chemistry, coordination, and controlled anxiety. Combining syrup appears straightforward, but during the 1880s it resembles conducting a precarious ritual involving sugar, soda, and destiny. You examine the containers, some identified, others anonymous, some bearing labels resembling caffeinated squirrel handwriting. There's coca extract, cola nut solution, substantial sugar syrup, and proprietary oils that would perplex experienced perfumers. The proportions loosely follow science, but primarily rely on the established principle of additional amounts rarely harm. The objective is consistency. The outcome is organized pandemonium. Initially, you dispense a measured or approximately measured portion of syrup into a tall, substantial glass. It's dark, dense, and glossy as fresh patent leather footwear. The syrup alone represents a flavor expedition, abundant, herbal, and somewhat concerning. The pharmacy's soda attendant, recently past adolescence but equipped with theatrical flair, prepares himself. His responsibility involves adding fizz, style, and avoiding accidental counter-combustion. Now arrives the enchantment, carbonated water. During an era when electricity remains optional and plumbing constitutes luxury, the soda apparatus represents both wonder and enigma. The equipment hisses, trembles, and spurts as the attendant activates the mechanism with telegraph operator precision, announcing war's conclusion. Cold, bubbly water floods the vessel, and immediately a fizzing tempest ascends. Bubbles race upward like delayed passengers. You stir promptly, but not excessively, avoiding overflow and sticky embarrassment. The utensil resonates against glass, releasing aromatic vapours of spice, citrus, and faintly medical intrigue. The beverage stabilizes into perfectly balanced circulation, sweet, vibrant, and invigorating, with foam resembling a silk hat on a Sunday minister. Naturally, not every batch succeeds. Occasionally the effervescence overflows and syrup escapes, cascading across the counter onto the pharmacy fee line. Sometimes proportions fail and results taste like optimism strained through aged fabric. No factory supervision exists here. Every beverage represents trust, aspiration, and Victorian courage. Patrons observe, captivated. Each glass receives individual preparation, customized to preference, and delivered with the pharmacist's finest impassive expression. Someone requests additional intensity and the attendant accommodates, attempting a double portion of confidential syrup. Others desire reduced carbonation, increased carbonation, or occasionally unprecedented syrup combinations that probably shouldn't recur. The procedure constitutes spectacle. Children gather, faces against displays, eyes widened by the transformation. Adults, typically stern, inevitably smile as bubbles ascend. Even veterans who've sampled every formula Atlanta offers find themselves queuing for additional glasses. The mixing transcends function, becoming theatre, chemistry, and subtle assurance that possibly this glass will surpass previous ones. You clean your hands on your covering, survey the adhesive battlefield, and recognize this has become Atlanta's new center. Not simply a pharmacy, but a platform for invention's daily performance. The effervescence diminishes, the syrup settles, and another content patron departs, animated, conversing, and planning their return. Mixing syrup, carbonating disorder. It's disorganized, unpredictable, and completely compelling. You envision your Victorian ancestor as embodying wisdom and iron discipline, crafting socks by candlelight, correcting misbehaving children, and never missing community gatherings. But examining her recipe collection, medical supplies, and the suspiciously vigorous sparkle in her gaze, you'll recognize something significant. There's considerable probability your grandmother was slightly pharmaceutically enhanced. and she had company. In 19th century America, nothing unusual existed about grandmothers, mothers, and even household pets receiving pharmaceutical assistance with daily responsibilities. Cocaine represented the era's wellness solution, and experiencing headaches, persistent coughs, or anxiety meant counting on grandmother to provide remedies, typically bottled, powdered, or fortunately homemade tonics tasting like festive transgression and mild immortality encounters. Enter her parlour and evidence appears. Organised patent medicine rows, relief powder containers, and French wine of coca decanters for occasions. The packaging promises wellness, learning, vitality, and pleasant disposition. No adverse effect mentions like spontaneous verse composition or pantry reorganisation at 3 a.m. Sunday afternoons feature punch bowls that transcend party highlights, becoming undisclosed experiments. Grandmother distributes cups with knowing smiles, and nobody questions why the quilting circle suddenly accelerates. Grandmother's nerve remedy serves as household essential, addressing everything from soothing teething infants to calming agitated relatives and enhancing exhausted farmhand endurance. Experiencing colds meant grandmother applying cocaine syrup to tongues. Dental pain required jaw numbing directly. Restless infants received family remedies, eliminating crying and more, for the genuinely unfortunate. Grandmother's chest applications contained sufficient camphor, menthol, and powdered coca leaves to maintain restoration for days or until wallpaper encounters occurred. Nobody questioned this. Cocaine commanded respect, rivaling baking powder, and provided superior entertainment at celebrations. Even advice publications endorsed it, recommending proper women maintain stocked cupboards and family vigour. Antique photographs show everyone upright and alert for reasons beyond propriety. Half the subjects operate on enthusiasm, others on unregulated pharmaceuticals. At community gatherings, lemonade achieves suspicious popularity. Grandmother attributes success to citrus essence, but attendees understand reality. Small-town America buzzes literally, and nobody objects if hymn performances become frantic. Elderly gentlemen repeat identical stories thrice, and youngsters maintain tag-playing energy past sunset. The sole disadvantage involves the family dentist, suddenly experiencing high demand and diminished patient supply. Naturally, every grandmother champions personal recipes, transmitted quietly or documented on emergency-only cards. Some households prefer commercial syrup convenience, while others maintain homemade traditions involving boiling, filtering, and flavouring perfection, occasionally including ginger hints or substantial brandy portions for nerves. Results speak independently: quilts completed rapidly, bread produced, tasks accomplished, and information exchanged frantically. Family gatherings conclude with universal handshaking, embracing, and planning subsequent Sunday meetings. Identical timing, identical dosage. Visiting historically, you'd admire grandmother's productivity and question her management strategies. The explanation was naturally simple: a confidential weapon in blue glass containers and liberal application willingness. Your Victorian grandmother transcended toughness. She achieved for daily portions superhuman status. And now you understand the family tree's energetic branches. You're experiencing your second or fifth Coca-Cola glass elevation, feeling sharper than recent months. Your hands steady, worries retreat into decoration, and existence suddenly appears limitless. Except possibly sleep. Life seems positive or minimally loud, brilliant, and tinged with questionable decision aftertaste. But as effervescence diminishes, you notice something additional: a suspicious jaw discomfort, a twinge during afternoon biscuit consumption, and the realization that your teeth, like inhibitions, might not survive the decade. Welcome to Adverse Effects' hidden realm. A location where every miracle beverage includes small print, assuming you can decipher it through sugar fog in late 19th century America. Nobody discusses consequences seriously. Newspaper advertisements overflow with endorsements claiming Coca-Cola enabled memoir completion in single sessions. Never felt superior. My offspring finally obey. No warnings exist unless counting avoid fine upholstery spillage. People remain excessively occupied enjoying newfound enthusiasm to notice molars quietly surrendering sequentially. The initial and obvious perpetrator is sugar. Coca-Cola achieves delicious, shocking sweetness, resembling unnecessary dessert. Every glass celebrates taste buds while waging enamel warfare. You commence with brilliant smiles, but after months of daily consumption, you're familiar with dull, pulsating pain, signaling dentist visits. Unfortunately, this era's dentistry involves less gentle maintenance and more survival ordeals. The individual selling tooth powder might extract teeth using pliers and robust moral encouragement. But sugar isn't the exclusive concern. The alternative magic ingredient, cocaine, quietly operates, numbing discomfort, elevating confidence, and facilitating incomplete project completion. For brief, magnificent periods, you're infallible. Tasks appear simpler, conversations become engaging, and weather improves. You represent your optimal self, until attempting sleep or consuming anything harder than mature fruit. Less attractive reality emerges. Mouth dryness, sensitive gums, and vague sensations of chewing gravel. Dentists, previously underemployed, now experience unprecedented demand. Cavities flourish like seasonal flowers. Fillings remain primitive, typically constructed from available materials, including tin, gold, or desperately flattened vintage coins. Every dentist visit constitutes adventure, potentially involving whiskey, vocalization, and spectators. Children prove especially susceptible. They adore sweet flavour, tingling sensation, novelty. Parents marvel at sudden energy and willingness scrubbing floors at 11 p.m. The exchange involves premature, deciduous tooth departure, creating whistling speech and unilateral chewing generations. Naturally, nobody connects patterns yet. Urban adults blame contemporary stress, acidic nutrition, or genetic misfortune. Some perceive ruined teeth as status symbols, demonstrating soda fountain affordability. Denture sales quietly escalate, and local extractors finally afford new attire. Still, for every uncomfortable jaw and sleepless night, dozens of inspiration and achievement stories exist. Success secrets involve sugar, caffeine blends, and chemical overconfidence sprinkles. You'll eventually pay, but presently continue sipping, smiling with remaining teeth, and maintaining Coca-Cola magic belief, adverse effects included. You might assume Coca-Cola's journey to global supremacy proceeded smoothly, a singular syrup ascending above bland competition. You'd be mistaken. The late 19th century represented wild concepts and wilder beverage golden ages, when every pharmacist with barrel access and slight moustache believed he could invent the subsequent phenomenon. If you could combine, agitate, and apply labelling, you possessed a tonic. Quality or hot tar taste mattered little. The environment is crowded, cacophonous, and extremely adhesive. There's Dr. Pepper arriving rapidly following Coca-Cola in Texas, introducing mysterious 23 flavour promises, most resembling prunes and determination. There's Moxie, advertising itself as nerve nourishment and boldly claiming universal cures, assuming your primary issue involves desperate bitterness and regret needs. And remember Vin Mariani, French wine infused with coca leaves and substantial moderation disregard, cherished by popes and exhausted authors alike. Everyone possesses recipes, assertions, and dubious testimonial armies. Every soda apparatus becomes experimental kitchens. Pharmacists experiment nocturnally, hoping to discover formulas that are invigorating and vaguely edible. Some attempt herbs, others roots, and reckless individuals experiment with genuine meat extracts. The less discussed about beef phosphate, the superior. Flavours span from intensely herbal to should have remained gardened. Surviving celery cola glasses warranted congratulations. You're now disappointment immune. Some competitors approach success. Pepsi, initially Brad's drink, commences as digestive assistance, capitalizing on cola excitement. Briefly, it becomes North Carolina pharmacy counter favorites until sugar shortages nearly cause obscurity. Other aspiring empires collapse at initial tastings. The greatest challenge transcends invention, its survival. Bottles detonate in transport vehicles, stoppers released during summer warmth, spraying unsuspecting individuals with adhesive optimism. Labels deteriorate, flavors spoil, and litigation accumulates like abandoned citrus peels. Advertising initiates warfare. Posters compete from every street fixture. Some guarantee bottled youth, others promise renewed existence. Drummers, salesmen, not musicians, traverse countryside offering complimentary samples and severe competitor warnings. Don't trust that novel tonic from across town. My relative lost hair and spouse merely smelling it. Each beverage transcends refreshment. Its lifestyle, gamble, and potential litigation awaiting occurrence. Occasionally, competitors demonstrate cleverness. There are challengers trying to topple Coca-Cola with knockoff names like Coke, Africola, and My Cola, each one dancing perilously near trademark catastrophe. Some attempt to mask their recipe by throwing in licorice or strange seasonings, praying nobody detects the aftertaste of panic. For every Coca-Cola, there exist 100 carbonated casualties and a select few lucky accidents. The road to soft drink glory is scattered with the broken glass of dreams, the tacky surfaces of destroyed drugstores, and the remnants of 1,000 catchphrases that nearly succeeded. Ultimately, Coca-Cola prevails, not because it's the sole option available, but because it's what consumers genuinely crave. Double the rivals emerge, it ferments, it effervesces, and usually it silently vanishes, abandoning only a dim recollection and a warning story for the upcoming wave of drink enthusiasts. Picture yourself for an instant standing at your neighborhood drugstore counter in 1890. You're exhausted, you're sore, you're seeking something that will sustain you through your workday, your tasks, and perhaps the existential anxiety that arrives around 4 in the afternoon, the remedy. You request a tumbler of Coca-Cola. No identification needed, no hushed code phrase, and absolutely zero moral outrage. In this vibrant, thriving era, you're about to sample what contemporary energy beverage corporations can only fantasize about. The legitimate rush. The mystery resides in the combination. Cocaine derived from South American coca plants encounters caffeine extracted from the harsh cola seed. Each stands as a dynamo independently, but combined, that's when matters become fascinating. The outcome is a drink that doesn't simply nudge you conscious. It virtually propels you from your chair. It's a surge that begins behind your eyeballs and travels directly to your fingertips, leaving you persuaded you could master algebra, construct a barn, and finally engage in that challenging discussion with your cousin. You take your initial taste. The icy carbonation stings your tongue, the sweetness spirals around your teeth, and almost immediately you sense your heart accelerate its rhythm. Your consciousness sharpens, your ideas sprint, and abruptly your task list appears less like a weight and more like an exhilarating opportunity. You feel competent, stimulated, and if we're being truthful, perhaps a bit too passionate about rearranging your sock collection. It's not discreet, but who desires discretion when you can possess triumph in a tumbler? This is the period when vigor is a way of life, and staying sharp isn't merely praised, it's demanded. Labourers pause for a glass heading to the mill. Homemakers order a serving to endure laundry and endless housework, and pupils swear loyalty to it for 11th hour studying. The sole caution is an implicit awareness. If you consume excessively, you might be discovered alphabetizing your neighbour's cupboard at midnight. Nevertheless, nobody's concerned. Coca-Cola's formula is protected, its enchantment uncontrolled, and its harshest opponents simply wish they'd conceived it themselves. Physicians distribute prescriptions for nervous fatigue, and nobody flinches when the patient demands a double. It's medication, naturally. Invigorating, powerful, and sanctioned by both medicine and the absence of national regulation. Caffeine and cocaine are dual motors of efficiency, propelling America onward with a sparkle and a grin. Naturally, some individuals wonder if it's all somewhat excessive. A few clergymen grumble about overstimulation, and one neighbourhood physician insists that a patient composed 3 manuscripts in 7 days before collapsing face first in a pie. But for the majority, the atmosphere is optimistic, the vitality infectious. Why challenge the formula for contentment when you're accomplishing so much? The rivals scramble to keep pace. Competing tonics attempt to surpass the original by incorporating more cocaine, caffeine, or a touch of enigmatic botanical energizers. None can replicate that euphoric, trembling sensation, a perfect combination of lawful pleasure, inexpensive sweetener, and sufficient active components to make a hummingbird perspire. America is captivated in the finest manner, and the cash draws celebrate. Eventually the inquiries will intensify, restrictions will emerge, formulas will transform. But currently you luxuriate in the radiance of absolute potential. With each sparkling glass, you're living evidence that history's greatest intoxications didn't always arrive with a caution notice. They arrived with a wink, a fizz, and a frantically pounding heart. So proceed, take another taste, the world isn't pausing, and neither are you. You've sampled Coca-Cola at the drugstore or requested it by the tumbler, and possibly even lined up twice in one afternoon. No criticism. Everybody's participating. But presently word is circulating. There are murmurs in Atlanta, then throughout the South. What if you didn't need to journey to the soda counter whatsoever? What if you could transport that identical fizzy, nerve-stimulating enchantment home? The solution materializes in the form of a glass container, a gamble of faith and the inaugural authentic Coca-Cola manufacturing plants. Initially, the concept appears nearly outrageous. The original formula is a protected mystery mixed behind drugstore stations by reliable personnel, and occasionally their unmonitored children, but quickly demand surpasses the soda dispensers. Consumers desire Coca-Cola at outdoor gatherings, on locomotives, and at orchestra uncomfortable family gatherings. They desire to conceal a container in their lunch container or present one to a neighbour without hauling them to the drugstore. The resolution? Bottling the enchantment one sticky, unpredictable batch at a moment. The earliest bottling ventures are more improvisation than commerce. Envision a dusty storage facility, barrels piled to the rafters, and a team of optimists equipped with corks, containers, and the anxious vitality of individuals who recognise one. One defective batch could submerge the entire district with syrup. Glass containers are costly, delicate, and notoriously undependable. Corks explode at random, occasionally in the middle of darkness. One incorrect manoeuvre and you're ankle deep in what the publications will subsequently describe as an exciting local beverage disaster. Sanitation is a notion still being developed. Manufacturing surfaces are swept. Occasionally labourers fill cork and mark containers manually, periodically quality testing a batch for research and definitely not for the excitement. The syrup is combined in large gleaming cauldrons, then merged with soda liquid and distributed with attention. Occasionally excessive, occasionally insufficient. Every container is a wager. Will it sparkle? Will it drip? Will it endure the cart journey to the neighbouring town? It's a contest of glass chance, and you're simply hoping your shipment doesn't detonate before you can consume it. Despite the disorder, the containers begin to surface everywhere. At Sunday outdoor gatherings, dusty locomotive stations, and even the occasional elegant dinner gathering. The Coca-Cola emblem, flowing and confident, transforms into a kind of credential, evidence that you're contemporary. Modern and somewhat dependent, neighbours evaluate their accumulations, debating about the optimal method to refrigerate a container and whether it tastes superior consumed gradually or gulped before anybody else obtains an opportunity. The manufacturing plants broaden. Equipment appears, introducing a sense of structure and considerably more commotion. Cork installers get substituted by mechanical cappers. Marks are affixed straight, or at minimum straighter. Manufacturing accelerates, and quickly you can purchase a container of Coca-Cola. In communities that haven't even erected street lamps yet, every fresh crate is a miniature marvel, a success over physics, glass, and human mistake. Bottling transforms everything. The beverage is no longer simply a regional oddity. It's a sensation families accumulate for. Summer youngsters exchange vacant containers for marbles or questionable favours. The soda counter relinquishes its dominance. But nobody minds. Presently, you can transport Coca-Cola anywhere on the veranda to employment to the boundaries of the planet. All it requires is a nickel and some faith in glass. And that's how the enchantment propagates, not simply by verbal communication, but by container, by crate, by the resolute hands of manufacturing labourers who for a period had the most pleasant occupation in America. It's a Sunday afternoon and you're positioned in a rigid wooden bench hearing a minister caution about the dangers of alcohol. The abstinence campaign is gathering momentum, and every respectable association in town, religious groups, women's auxiliaries, suspiciously sober politicians desires to cleanse America of its most infamous vice. Whiskey, beer, even wine. All are accused for shattered families, depleted fortunes, and late-night square dancing gone horribly awry. The mission for abstinence is ubiquitous. Pamphlets drift through the avenues displaying intoxicated husbands collapsed in passages and virtuous children staring longingly at containers of lemonade. Abstinence gatherings occupy town centres, guaranteeing redemption through sobriety and the occasional discordant hymn. It's a campaign constructed on restraint, ethical passion and the communal aspiration that if you simply discard sufficient gin, everyone will ultimately be capable to arrive at employment punctually. But here's the irony. While the ministers condemn the bottle, something peculiar is occurring at the drugstore station. There, in the sparkling sanctuary of the soda counter, the identical individuals who previously filled their containers now queue for a distinct kind of stimulation. Coca-Cola, promoted as an abstinence beverage and beneficial tonic, is disappearing from the shelves, distributed in tall tumblers and savoured without a hint of controversy. Coca-Cola is the exception everyone's been pursuing. It doesn't obscure your consciousness or muddle your pronunciation. Well, not until the third or fourth tumbler. You can present it to your youngsters, your minister, and your spinster aunt with equal satisfaction. The neighbourhood church outdoor gathering, previously a solemn occasion with lukewarm lemonade, presently sparkles with amusement and mysterious fresh degrees of efficiency. The Sunday school instructors are abruptly arranging activities, creating murals, and establishing achievements for pie-consuming competitions. Nobody is quarrelling. Everyone is simply somewhat energized. As the campaign gains momentum, drugstores and soda counters intensify their promotion. Coca-Cola is a household beverage, a drink for the accountable, upstanding resident who still desires to experience just somewhat untamed after supper. Advertisements declare it as the solution to intemperance, the drink that permits you to refuse whiskey and accept whatever it is you experience when the caffeine and cocaine impact simultaneously. It's the most secure rebellion you'll ever participate in. The contradiction is delightful. While America's ethical protectors are attempting to eliminate one dependency, another is surfacing in every community and region. Religious groups exchange recommendations about how considerably superior existence is presently that Uncle Lester consumes Coca-Cola instead of brandy. Nobody acknowledges that Uncle Lester presently recites verse at the peak of his lungs and reorganizes the hymnals by shade. For all their sincere objectives, the abstinence crusaders have initiated an unintentional revolution. By forcing drinkers from the tavern and toward the soda counter, they've established a fresh kind of communal custom, assembling around a tumbler, exchanging anecdotes, and remaining conscious past midnight with the assistance of a particular fizzy beverage. The soda dispenser, previously a modest worker, is presently the soul of the celebration. Part counsellor, part bartender, and part confidant, The revolution is courteous, lawful, and somewhat trembling. The abstinence campaign achieves its triumph, but not in the manner it anticipated. In attempting to satisfy America's craving, it produced an even larger fixation. And as you sit there consuming your fourth tumbler of Coca-Cola, you comprehend sometimes the optimal method to transform the world is accidentally one carbonated exception at a moment. By presently, the miracle tonic that previously sat quietly behind the station at Jacob's Pharmacy is ubiquitous. What commenced as a regional curiosity, a delicious nerve tonic, a solution for headaches, has transformed into an unstoppable phenomenon. Coca-Cola has made the transition from whispered endorsement to complete nationwide sensation. You recognise it's gone widespread when even your neighbour's canine is rumoured to favour it over water. It's not simply Atlanta. Information of this magical elixir propagates along railroad paths and telegraph cables, travelling in the pockets of itinerant salesmen and the enthusiastic testimonials of pleased consumers. If you reside in Savannah or St. Louis, you've heard the accounts. There's a beverage that can make your spine stop aching, assist you complete your tasks, and persuade your in-laws that you're finally progressing places. The speculation mill generates fresh capabilities for Coca-Cola daily. Some declare it can enhance your vision. Some pledge it's rescued their matrimony. And a few assert it's why their livestock is abruptly producing more milk. Drugstores everywhere hurry to inventory. Bottling facilities emerge in every region of the South, each with their distinct interpretation of what constitutes the ideal batch. Glass containers traverse the nation by wagon convoy and steamboat. Small communities compete to be the initial on their district to stock the recent shipment, and soda dispensers everywhere rehearse their technique, aspiring to accomplish the perfect sparkle. Even the most doubtful, expressionless consumers can't oppose the display. At this juncture, Coca-Cola's promotion is less advertising initiative and more nationwide crusade. Posters and pamphlets assert it's a cure-all for contemporary troubles, from depleted spirits to lazy digestion. Verbal communication converts every residence into a testing group, every backyard outdoor gathering into a flavour evaluation. Youngsters exchange vacant containers like baseball memorabilia. Adult men boast about how many tumblers they can consume in a solitary afternoon without blinking. Meanwhile, neighbourhood physicians and druggists appreciate the prosperity. Certainly they're not completely confident what's in the confidential syrup, but commerce is thriving and nobody appears to be expiring, at minimum not any quicker than typical. Town barbers maintain a crate or two in the rear chamber for particular consumers. Even burial establishments have containers available for those requiring a stimulant, because nothing declares celebration of existence like a chilled tumbler of something somewhat mysterious and highly energizing. Coca-Cola's position as a miracle remedy has shifted. Presently, it's less about repairing what troubles you and more about being component of the phenomenon. To decline a tumbler is to announce yourself as distrustful, antiquated, or potentially even treasonous. Community occasions feature competitions to observe who can consume the most without belching. Religious gatherings exchange the lemonade for soda, and the organist performs twice as rapidly as previously. Behind the operations, the original developers scramble to satisfy demand. Components arrive by the crate, workers labour lengthy, stimulated hours, formulas are adjusted, bottling sequences extended, and the mythology continues to expand. Coca-Cola is no longer a quiet guarantee of wellness. It's an invitation to participate in the future, one tumbler at a moment. So as you wander past your neighbourhood soda counter, listen for the hiss of the valve and the pleasant conversation of the gathering. The miracle has transformed into the widespread. The tonic is presently a custom, and America is officially captivated by the flavour, the stimulation, and the unstoppable sensation that with sufficient Coca-Cola anything is achievable. You've dedicated months, or has it been years, consuming Coca-Cola whenever life's minor aches and irritations emerge. Initially, everything is marvellous. Your headaches are eliminated, your disposition is elevated, and you've alphabetized the cupboard more occasions than you can recall. But as the sensation propagates and the vacant containers accumulate, a distinct kind of stimulation begins to resonate in the distance. A subtle, anxious inquiry about whether all this excellent health might be arriving at a cost. It commences quietly. Perhaps you observe your hands trembling slightly, or you're conscious at midnight with sufficient vitality to repaint the veranda. You hear a neighbour mention she can't slumber, or a companion admits he's acquired a mysterious spasm in his left eye. Individuals jest about the Coca-Cola tremors, but it doesn't require long for speculation to circulate. Excessive of the fresh tonic might not be beneficial. Enter the physicians and the publications. What was previously marketed as a miracle is presently tentatively questioned. Headlines surface: "Is your soda making you ill?" Authorities caution of overstimulated nerves. A particularly noteworthy article describes a gentleman who allegedly consumed a dozen containers in a solitary day and then attempted to excavate a fresh well in his front lawn using simply his hands. Abruptly, nervous fatigue, previously blamed on the climate or marital tension, has a fresh culprit. The druggists are the initial to receive complaints. Consumers request weaker syrup, reduced fizz, or something somewhat more calming. Some demand the previous formula, not comprehending that the formula is transforming. Behind the operations, transactions don't decline, not initially. But a shadow of distrust begins to develop, gentle and gradual, like a thunderstorm approaching from the periphery of town. Behind the drugstore entrances, there's a scramble to modify. Murmurs circulate that the formula might be adjusted, that certain energizing components could quietly vanish. Fresh advertisements emphasize the drink's cleanliness, its wholesome characteristics, and the benefits of restraint. Presently, Coca-Cola isn't simply about vitality, it's about equilibrium. The term invigorating is exchanged for refreshing. The communication is, if unstated, continue consuming, but perhaps decelerate slightly. Physicians, meanwhile, transform into both opponents and reluctant admirers. They caution against overindulgence, advise their patients to reduce consumption, and yet can't resist enjoying a tumbler themselves after a lengthy, exhausted day. Some even prescribe Coca-Cola as a solution for the overexcitement produced by, well, excessive Coca-Cola. It's a tidy, small circle, and nobody discusses it too audibly. The authentic transformation arrives with the accounts told quietly at rear barriers and soda counters. My aunt declares her heart accelerated all night. My cousin can't maintain her hands motionless. Uncle Frank was discovered sweeping the pathway at 3 a.m, and presently nobody trusts him with a broom. Individuals begin to comprehend perhaps a tonic this powerful ought to arrive with some caution. Nevertheless, few abandon the practice. The flavour, the custom, and the stimulation are too attractive. Instead, a fresh culture materialises. Restraint, conscious consuming, and the casual pretense that everything is perfectly acceptable. As the formula transforms, so do individuals' anticipations. Coca-Cola progresses from miracle remedy to everyday indulgence. Still delicious, still favoured, but presently coloured with the understanding that sometimes excessive of a beneficial thing can arrive with a spasm. And as you distribute yourself simply one additional tumbler for the journey, you acknowledge an agreement with the remainder of America. History's greatest phenomena always arrive with a gentle caution, sometimes inscribed on the mark and sometimes concealing in your distinct reflection. You've grown accustomed to your daily tumbler of Coca-Cola, a dependable ignition in the darkness, a confidential handshake among the caffeinated and the nation's unofficial efficiency strategy. But abruptly a tempest of distrust develops. Murmurs spiral in drugstores and drawing rooms. Is there genuinely cocaine in the nation's preferred beverage? Is that why the neighbour's garden has never appeared superior? Is this why your dentist presently has a vacation residence? Public anxiety begins to surface, and for the initial occasion, the nation confronts the uncomfortable reality that refreshing tumbler isn't simply invigorating, it's mildly prohibited. In at minimum 3 European nations, medical publications caution of cocaine habituation, and reformers assemble for anxious gatherings fueled ironically by tumblers of the identical beverage they presently challenge. Ministers lecture about the dangers of artificial energization while their youngsters steal containers behind the corner choir section. Abruptly, restraint transforms into the term of the day, and nobody is completely confident how to spell it. The publications catch attention, headlines like a narcotic in every tumbler and is your soda counter a portal to insanity? Surface sandwiched between advertisements for mildly medicated tonics and miracle remedies. Editorials scold America for its innocence. Cartoonists have a celebration drawing glassy-eyed soda dispensers and trembling homemakers stacking firewood at midnight. The alarm is infectious. The government is recording observations. And abruptly the Coca-Cola company discovers itself at the nucleus of America's most courteous controversy. In the boardrooms, warning signals activate. The brand's future, constructed on the dual foundations of confidentiality and syrup, presently confronts its greatest challenge. How do you extract the cocaine from Coca-Cola without acknowledging there was ever cocaine in Coca-Cola? The solution, as always, is to act quickly, communicate gradually, and pray. Nobody examines the components list too carefully. Company chemists commence work experimenting with methods to preserve the flavour, the stimulation, and, crucially, the public's confidence. First arrives the decocainized coca plant, a pronunciation challenge and a technical achievement. The company quietly obtains fresh suppliers, transports in crates of processed plants, and guarantees the public that nothing significant has transformed except the element everyone is abruptly concerned about. The confidential formula receives another adjustment. Somewhat more sweetener, somewhat extra caffeine. Manufacturing perhaps a whisper of caramel simply to maintain the doubters distracted. The advertisements receive a renovation too. Presently, Coca-Cola is pure, wholesome, and the beverage of restraint. The term cocaine quietly disappears from every mark, pamphlet, and hand-painted indication. Soda counters are simply without ceremony. Most consumers, absorbed in discussion and carbonation, scarcely observe the distinction. At minimum, not immediately. Certainly, some veterans assert the fresh formula doesn't make their ears resonate completely the identical manner. Others complain about the excellent previous days when a tumbler of Coca-Cola could inspire verse and power cleanse the driveway. But for the majority, America shrugs and takes another taste. The custom remains, the mythology persists, and the sole element truly absent is the confidential nobody desires to discuss. What might have been a controversy transforms into instead a quiet pivot. America's most uncomfortable separation is managed with the kind of elegance only achievable when everyone agrees to disregard what simply occurred. The tumbler stays half occupied, the grin lingers, and Coca-Cola marches forward, fresh and enhanced. Or at minimum, fresh sufficient. In the conclusion, you discover something significant. Sometimes history transforms not with an explosion, but with a sigh, a formula modification, and a nation's gentle agreement to progress onward. So the magnificent experiment is concluded. The cocaine is eliminated, tucked quietly from the formula and into the margins of history textbooks. Yet Coca-Cola still dominates completely. Because what's abandoned behind is no less powerful, simply less probable to require a discreet journey to the druggist. What remains? A generous portion of sweetener, a substantial injection of caffeine and promotion so effective it could mark its sand in the Sahara. Let's dive into the sugar story. Following the transformation, the formula becomes increasingly sweet. Every serving resembles walking into a confectionery shop. You're consuming what amounts to dessert without needing justification. This isn't merely indulgence. It's become a way of life. The carbonation sparkles. The sugary taste stays with you. Before long, an entire country becomes dependent on this sole white substance remaining in the bottle. Sugar proves to be its own form of enchantment. The consumption pattern feeds the desire. There's no morning after regret, merely a pleasant energy dip you'll attribute to contemporary existence. Then consider caffeine. Long before coffee chains and energy beverages occupy every street corner, Coca-Cola delivers that essential boost in each container. Require alertness before starting your shift? Reach for a Coke. Sluggish following midday meal? Coke. Must clean your home? Draft a manuscript or dodge responsibility? Uncomfortable exchange at a family gathering? Coke. The stimulation feels mellower now. Gone are the days of unintended verses or impromptu spiritual melodies. Yet it persists, resembling a soft prod from your most energetic companion. But what truly sustains Coca-Cola through this post-cocaine period is absolute, undiluted promotional brilliance. The advertisements are omnipresent. Signs, publications, rural building exteriors, and ultimately the revolutionary apparatus. Television brings polar bears, Father Christmas, fashionable young pairs in open-top automobiles and cheerful households at outdoor meals. The communication remains consistent. Coca-Cola transcends being merely a beverage. It represents joy. It embodies America. It means acceptance. Everything contained within a glass container or aluminum cylinder. Should you prefer something contemporary? The catchphrases arrive constantly and carry an almost mesmerizing quality. Tasty and invigorating. The break that revitalizes. It's the genuine article. Every expression serves as encouragement, a subtle suggestion, and an assurance. Promotion departments create fresh celebrations, fresh opportunities, and fresh justifications to open a Coke, distribute one during winter holidays, transport a supply to the sporting event, refresh yourself during warm weather, acknowledge an ordinary weekday. The beverage remains perpetually appropriate, perpetually accessible, and perpetually somewhat habit-forming. Rivals emerge and fade, yet Coca-Cola's identity persists, seemingly unaffected by evolving preferences or the emergence of wellness movements. Health professionals raise concerns. Oral care specialists discreetly enhance their tools. And educational institutions attempt replacing carbonated drinks with plain water, typically met with vocal objections from pupils who refuse to abandon their daily practice. Detractors label it nutritionally void. Devotees call it solace. Regardless, the container is quickly refilled. Through the passing decades, Coca-Cola evolves with new varieties, new containers, including reduced-calorie options. For the conscience-stricken, the recipe remains protected, but the approach stays constant. Maintain the sugar, maintain the caffeine, and maintain the fantasy thriving, one meticulously promoted container at a stretch. So what endures? Simply everything of significance. The sweetness, the caffeine, the relentless power of shared memory, the pure satisfaction of hearing that initial sharp hiss, and a promotional apparatus so convincing it caused America to repeatedly embrace a drink that now represents less about the contents and more about the emotion it evokes. Take a taste. Grin. Somewhere, an advertisement grins in return. It's a fresh era, and you're positioned in a reality that seems expanded, more rapid and somewhat more sugary than previously. Coca-Cola, originated as a drugstore creation and marketed as a health drink, has broken free from the glass and stone boundaries of Jacob's Pharmacy and ventured outward. It appears on locomotives, at outdoor gatherings, inside sports arenas, and, remarkably enough, even in frozen territories. Should you trust the White Bear marketing, the drink that initially treated headaches now addresses humanity's desire for progress. Additional sodas are spreading like wildlife at a vegetable festival. What once belonged exclusively to the druggist's domain has become a competition of taste, bubbles, and passionate devotion. Root beer, ginger ale, citrus soda. They're all competing for space in your refrigerator, yet none possess quite the identical narrative, quite the identical confidential mixture, or quite the identical talent for appearing precisely when required. You'll discover Coca-Cola at the local shop in the tiniest settlement or at accommodations in the French capital. It's the common dialect expressed through carbonation. The production facilities now operate with intention. Bottling operations extend endlessly, producing a continuous flow of glass. Vehicles carrying containers depart from urban centres, bound for rural areas, shorelines, and wherever a thirsty wanderer might appear. Soda dispensers continue delivering the wonder, but the genuine transformation occurs in sealed tops and accessibility. For the initial time, you can consume your preferred fizz at your convenience, at your location, no druggist necessary. Marketing initiatives become as integral to existence as meteorological updates. The Coca-Cola emblem, rounded red and immediately identifiable, accompanies you constantly on small fire starters, timepieces, and even the surfaces of distant rural shops. The corporation begins creating customs simply to increase container sales. Santa Claus consumes Coke, athletes drink it during breaks, and cinemas realize audiences will tolerate nearly anything if they're holding a cold beverage cup. Global reach accelerates like a bottle seal under force. Military personnel bring Coca-Cola overseas during conflicts and continuously request it. Fresh bottling facilities emerge on each landmass, providing beverages to individuals who've never visited Atlanta but can repeat the advertising tune. It transforms not simply into a soda, but an emblem, an indication that you, likewise, are experiencing the modern age, that you belong to a global organization whose participation demands only thirst and a coin. Coca-Cola's opposition attempts everything. Some experiment wildly with taste, others with unusual hues, but most merely attempt replicating the mysterious recipe, never quite achieving success. Some collapse dramatically, others establish their own devoted base. But Coca-Cola continues expanding. It's in meal containers, on advertisements, in highway eateries, and central to every warm weather recollection. The confidential formula stays confidential, and the mythology only expands. Eventually, soda transcends being merely a drink. It's a custom. Families celebrate occasions with clinking glass containers. Young people share a collection at the shore. Parents, somewhat remorseful, secretly consume one or two when children aren't observing. The planet has turned effervescent, and nobody appears troubled. You recline, absorbing the recognizable sound of bubbles and joy. The container perspires in your grasp, cool and reassuring. It's difficult to accept it originated as a cough medicine, a headache solution, a remedy for whatever troubled you. Currently, it's what unites you, bridges continents, and transforms the mundane into a minor, pleasant occasion. Take another taste. You're participating in something substantial now, a worldwide symbol, contained specifically for you. So, here you find yourself, resting in bed, perhaps with a dim recollection of that final glass of soda, and pondering. Would you individually have endured the golden age of original Coca-Cola? Could you have managed a reality where every headache arrived with a prescription, every soda dispenser was a pharmacy, and the trendiest new drink included a caution statement that proclaimed side effects might include euphoria, sleeplessness, and unintended verse? Let's establish the environment. You awaken in 1890s Atlanta, a metropolis throbbing with vitality, and not solely from the railways, manufacturing plants, and countless political addresses. The genuine energy originates from the pharmacies, where everyone from anxious merchants to inquisitive school children queues for their daily glass. The atmosphere is humid, the pavements are scorching, and the complete town is subtly trembling. There are more patent remedies than produce, and most taste either like sweets or gentle disappointment. Initially, you'd need to endure the fundamentals. Are you prepared trusting your druggist beyond your physician because the neighborhood pharmacist is partially barkeeper, partially sorcerer, and completely improvising each time he serves a glass? Would you pause before consuming something unfamiliar and enigmatic, understanding completely it might hold sugar, caffeine, cocaine, or a confidential mixture of plants nobody's identified? In this period, inquisitiveness is a survival ability alongside a resilient digestive system and the capacity to maintain composure through tooth discomfort. Next arrives the social challenge. Could you maintain pace with the discussion at the soda dispenser where the newest rumours circulate quicker than the carbonation in your glass? Would you courteously chuckle along as your companions argue whether Coca-Cola is the finest innovation since pre-cut bread, which, coincidentally, doesn't exist yet? Or would you chance social banishment by requesting plain water? Understand, water is for the doubtful and the unlucky. Genuine Americans consume whatever's bubbly and potentially somewhat prohibited. Now, regarding the side effects. Could you rest after 2 or 3 glasses? Or would you become part of the restless population cleaning their entrance areas at midnight? Would you approach the dentist courageously and frequently? Or simply acknowledge that by your late 20s you'd be exhaling through several openings in your grin? Would you sustain a complete day on solely soda, dubious bread, and optimism? Or would you discover yourself craving a salad simply for the change? And then there's the question of movements. Could you match the persistent marketing, the fresh slogans, the continuous competitions for who could consume the most without flinching? Would you begin desiring the ceremony, the ice-cold container, the sound of the fizz? Could you encounter a temperance demonstration with a serious expression, privately planning your next visit to the soda dispenser? Reflecting back, it's evident survival in the original Coke period wasn't simply about wellness or behaviours. It was about accepting the ridiculous, welcoming a bit of danger, and discovering happiness in every carbonated sip. Above all, it was about togetherness, a collective journey in flavour, caffeine, and unexpected chemical creation. If you could preserve your intelligence, your amusement, and majority of your teeth, you'd likely manage adequately. So as you fade into sleep, feel thankful for your purified water, your reasonable caffeine, and your oral care coverage. But don't overlook the chaotic, unlikely chronicle that brought about the simple container on your bedside table. Would you have endured? Naturally you would. You're present still, ultimately, and Chronicle, like soda, consistently discovers a method to continue rising back. It's a cold morning in 1890, and you're positioned in the reception area of your neighbourhood doctor's practice. The wall covering is deteriorating, the periodicals are 20 years outdated, and the sole thing more constant than the odour of cleaning solution is the collection of sneezes from other patients. You're present for a headache, a cough, or perhaps simply a general condition of anxiety, a universal diagnosis that encompasses everything from philosophical despair to excessive household chores. You prepare for the typical procedure, several inquiries, a prod or two, and a firm instruction to obtain more outdoor air. But this occasion the doctor inclines forward, reduces his volume and prescribes you something. A daily portion of Coca-Cola. You can scarcely accept your fortune. No harsh tablets, no powdery substances, no terrible tonics that taste like failure. Instead, you depart the practice with an official, hand-written prescription for a drink you'd willingly consume regardless. The physician passes you the prescription with an unmistakable gleam of satisfaction, as though he's just handed you the key to paradise. 1 glass 3 times daily, extra servings encouraged if you're feeling bold. You silently pray your ailment lingers just a little longer. You practically dance down the street, past the hardware shop, and that unusually spirited mutt heading straight for the drugstore. The pharmacist glances at your script and smiles knowingly. "Ah yes, the doctor's preferred remedy," he remarks, retrieving the bottle with theatrical flair. He prepares your tonic, adds a lavish burst of carbonated water, and pushes the glass toward you like a card dealer at a high-stakes table. You take that initial taste, thankful that for once, medication doesn't feel like torture. The pharmacy buzzes with fellow sufferers around you. Some complain of migraines, others claim nervous exhaustion, and a handful simply need justification to stay and socialise. The whole scene borders on comedy. Adults exchanging tales of their supposed afflictions, clutching prescription papers like military decorations, debating the ideal hour for a second or third serving. One woman whispers that her baby's teething troubles disappeared, while her own temperament brightened considerably. Another gentleman insists Coca-Cola powered him through painting his entire residence in one marathon session. Nobody mentions complications, and the physician certainly won't bring them up. Inside the consultation room, the doctor's cabinet houses Coca-Cola bottles next to conventional treatments, laudanum, quinine, camphor, and assorted concoctions that reek of leather polish. Yet it's obvious which remedy attracts the most devoted clientele. Patients start appearing at the doctor's office purely for the prescription cough or not, headache or simply Monday blues. Everyone craves a sip of tomorrow. The brilliance lies in the marketing. What began as a fountain drink curiosity has transformed into a medicinal sensation, something you can promote and consume without shame. The boundary separating medical care from leisurely indulgence grows fuzzy, and nobody raises objections. Physicians hungry for appreciative clients and enthusiastic endorsements begin recommending Coca-Cola for ailments ranging from ordinary sniffles to emotional distress. Revenue climbs. Moods lift accordingly. Before long, the doctor's reception area becomes the town's favourite gathering spot, packed with optimistic visitors and the quiet whisper of paper prescriptions. In an era of leeches, bloodletting and questionable salves, Coca-Cola feels revolutionary, invigorating, beneficial and most importantly mouth-watering. And as you drink your medically sanctioned elixir, you think perhaps feeling slightly unwell isn't terrible after all. The century turns, and while the rest of America fixates on governance, technological breakthroughs, and preventing their derby hats from flying off, you're far more captivated by a different kind of culture, the enigmatic realm beyond the soda counter. There, within the marble and brass centre of every drugstore, genuine authority rests with the soda jerks. Partially scientists, partially performers and unofficial guardians of neighbourhood confidences, you settle onto your regular seat, barely beyond the swinging fountain partition. Across from you, a youngster in an immaculate white coat, paper cap tilted at a mildly defiant slant, maintains his position. To casual observers, he simply serves beverages and cleans surfaces. But you understand differently. Soda jerks form their own brotherhood, an organisation without formal paperwork but abundant implicit protocols. Their equipment is basic long spoons, syrup dispensers, and considerable forbearance. Their expertise, though, is far from elementary. Observe carefully and you'll notice the discreet greeting, recognition for habitués, a conspiratorial glance for another jerk from a different pharmacy. An unspoken language exchanged through syrup selections and carbonation levels. They share formulas like illusionists exchange techniques, perpetually hunting for that next flawless mixture that renders customers speechless or minimally bouncing with vitality. Every competent soda jerk understands the narratives. He knows who recently became betrothed, who's quarrelling with the schoolmistress, and who sneaks an additional cherry phosphate following choir rehearsal. The soda fountain serves as confessional and rumour mill, where the jerk distributes wisdom alongside extra froth. He absorbs tales of romantic disappointment, commemorates academic achievements and guards secrets more faithfully than most elected officials honour commitments. Entry into these ranks is straightforward but exacting. You begin washing glasses, scrubbing, organising and observing. Eventually you earn permission to operate the spigots, portion syrup and mix without creating sticky catastrophes. However, the genuine challenge is velocity. Can you serve 5 beverages, recall 6 customers and recount previous week's baseball results without faltering? Can you weather the Sunday onslaught when seemingly the entire community arrives immediately after services, craving both sweetness and fresh gossip? The advantages are understated but delightful. You receive the choicest rumours, unlimited taste testing, and respect from every youngster in the area. You're privy to upcoming flavours first, solely aware of actual syrup quantities in a double portion, and you possess authority to remedy a miserable day with supplementary fizz. When someone genuinely requires uplifting, you might even provide them the treasured special. A clandestine formula known exclusively to chosen individuals and allegedly effective against everything from romantic anguish to performance anxiety. Yet substantial authority demands substantial accountability. The soda jerk arbitrates straw protocols, maintains the marble surface, and protects against unmanageable crowds of penny-clutching youngsters. He must never, under any conditions, allow the carbonation to dissipate or conversation to stagnate. When business concludes, after the final glass gets washed and illumination dims, soda jerks convene for one last hushed review. They recall the day's melodramas, exchange intelligence from competing fountains, and perhaps, just perhaps, refine a novel formula before dawn. Therefore, when you next request a beverage at the counter, acknowledge respectfully. You're encountering a clandestine organisation, a fellowship, and occasionally sisterhood of fizz, taste, and impeccable casual conversation. And with exceptional fortune, you could discover the secret greeting. The advertising golden era arrives, billboards tower above urban thoroughfares. Publications overflow with flashy artwork and boisterous proclamations. The messaging is inescapable, regardless of direction. Coca-Cola represents tomorrow's beverage, your medical solution, and definitive proof you've embraced contemporary America. Medical assertions proliferate, matched by promotional fervour, and distinguishing between them grows increasingly difficult. You pass a barn decorated with "Drink Coca-Cola" written in sweeping, assured lettering. You grab the newspaper and encounter full-spread advertisements featuring radiant homemakers and sportsmen, their fingers wrapped affectionately around perspiring glasses. At the drugstore, signage promises one serving eliminates exhaustion, cures headaches, and revitalizes spirits. Another advertisement attached to a telegraph post declares the beverage receives physician recommendations, maternal trust, and childhood affection. Believing every placard, Coca-Cola remedies everything from digestive problems to broken hearts and might assist your lottery chances. Behind the curtain, promotional operations function at maximum capacity. Catchphrases undergo testing, refinement, and deployment with all the discretion of a downtown parade. Delicious and refreshing, the perfect brain stimulant, it's authentic. Each expression is engineered to embed itself mentally and resurface whenever you experience minimal thirst. Brand representatives predating modern influencers traverse the nation distributing samples, greeting people and informing anyone receptive that Coca-Cola suits modern existence. No aspect of everyday existence escapes this crusade. At the regional exposition, you obtain a complimentary bottle for estimating marbles in a container. At the schoolhouse, educators distribute Coca-Cola bookmarks rewarding excellent spelling. Church gatherings participate too, with outdoor banners subtly implying Jesus could have transformed water into something more effervescent. Given the opportunity, medical professionals become inadvertent spokespeople. Enthusiastic testimony from Dr. Someone of Peoria appears in every publication. Pharmacists obtain exclusive window displays and occasional bonus shipments for dedication. Homemakers collect vouchers, youngsters plead for promotional items, and even doubtful fathers cannot resist appealing refreshment following lengthy office days. Occasionally, medical claims exceed plausibility and rational thinking cures hysteria, rejuvenates elderly individuals, enhances popularity when ailment or insecurity exists. There's advertising promising Coca-Cola provides resolution. And the pitch is beauty. Even without effectiveness, it surpasses castor oil's taste, and nobody ever lamented. A glass of cold sweetness following a warm journey homeward, you recognize the true brilliance isn't contained within the bottle. It resides in the commitment. Coca-Cola transcends being merely a beverage. It's passage to tomorrow, belonging's pathway. You drink, you grin, and you join countless others convinced by optimism, promotion, and contentment, all costing 1 nickel. Drifting towards slumber, you contemplate how much purchasing stems from necessity versus irresistible attraction of genuinely effective slogans. If the response is predominantly that, well, you're not isolated in advertising's intensive age, you're simply another satisfied patron, convinced, fulfilled, and possibly slightly mesmerized. Saturday in 1905 arrives, and your residence overflows with activity. Children occupy every space, scattered across the veranda, charging through the cooking area, snickering beneath the dining furniture. You've abandoned tallying visiting cousins, and nobody attempts locating bedtime anymore. The responsible party, naturally, sits prominently on the sitting room shelf, a Coca-Cola pitcher, moisture droplets guaranteeing universal enthusiasm. You distribute rounds of chilled glasses and chaos erupts. During this soda golden period, children aren't merely permitted at the fountain, they're the most zealous patrons. The pharmacist provides additional syrup for young ones, and guardians encourage second helpings with knowing looks, appreciative for anything preventing complaints about boiled vegetables. Caffeine and sugar represent blessings, not problems. Nobody murmurs about attention disorders. Instead, you wonder how rapidly Junior circles the residence before collapsing amid green giggles and footwear. Bedtime becomes collective bargaining, and you, equipped solely with a storybook and uncertain authority, stand no possibility. The youngsters bounce between spaces, creating games requiring zero regulations and unlimited endurance. Their amusement is piercing, their pleas for additional sips unrelenting. A Coca-Cola glass serves as ultimate persuasion. Assurance that tomorrow's tasks receive attention bordering on frenzied enthusiasm. You recognize the consequences. Nobody sleeps until well past midnight, and tomorrow's daybreak delivers drowsy apologies and syrup-stained embraces. At celebrations, the beverage steals attention. Forget confections. Children cluster around the soda fountain, exchanging marbles and confidences for another glass. Every child maintains preferred combinations. Cherry syrup attracts adventurers, lemon suits contemplative types, double carbonation appeals to risk-takers. Brothers and sisters form temporary partnerships united pursuing extra servings. Cousins establish whispering alliances, devising elaborate plans, raiding the icebox after darkness. No adult escapes midnight appeals for merely a sample, and nobody monitors refills. Educators quickly learn reality. Classroom order becomes fantasy. When half the pupils began mornings consuming 2 Coca-Cola glasses, schoolyards buzz with children whose stamina appears limitless. Tag games continue indefinitely, spelling competitions progress rapidly, and recreation becomes swirling masses of limbs, joints, and merriment. Teachers hoping for peaceful afternoons know checking lunch containers first matters. When bottles appear inside, all expectations vanish, yet nobody objects. The country is youthful, restive, and constantly moving. Guardians acknowledge bedtime flexibility, and neighbours exchange sleeplessness solutions, none matching a cold soda glass's effectiveness initially. Family photograph collections accumulate wild-gazed children, flushed faces and broad smiles, gripping glass bottles like championships. Even the household canine seems more animated, pursuing his tail with renewed vigour. As you hear muffled rumbling of children stampeding through upper hallways, you realise nobody worries about screen exposure or nighttime schedules. Only universal happiness matters, sweetened and, for several precious years, completely unstoppable. Therefore, you recline, accept the pandemonium, and pour yourself a glass also. If nobody sleeps before 1910, you should embrace the experience, one fizzy, sleepless joy-drenched evening at a time. Enter an American sitting room at the 20th century's beginning, and you'll notice something gleaming atop the mantelpiece or positioned on shelving, an empty Coca-Cola bottle showcased like a safari prize. It could be the traditional straight-sided version, or one bearing a hand-painted insignia already peeling around edges. Yet regardless of design, each bottle carries a narrative and frequently a subtle syrup stain on the timber below it. Coca-Cola isn't simply a refreshment anymore, it's an occurrence, a phenomenon, and for certain individuals the beginning of serious collecting obsession. For every passionate soda consumer, there's an aspiring collector searching the passages behind the drugstore, pockets rattling with nickels and aspirations of discovering a scarce or exceptionally attractive bottle. Boasting privileges are paramount. If you possess the inaugural year's bottling, your neighbours hear about it repeatedly, and potentially through expressive movement at the upcoming garden gathering, youngsters become miniature treasure seekers, examining waste receptacles and passages for that elusive embossed insignia or the legendary bottle. From a faraway municipality, they exchange bottles like sports cards, negotiating for marbles or lemon pie portions. Some youngsters even establish their own bottle societies, complete with confidential passwords and intricate rituals involving shattered glass piles and considerable parental objection. Adults participate in the pursuit, also. Proud fathers arrange their workroom shelves with dusty bottles, bragging about the uncommon green-tinged glass exclusively from the Birmingham facility. Mothers transform empty bottles into vases, candle holders, or, in one notable instance, a planter for the world's most caffeinated flower. Even the neighbourhood pharmacist maintains several favourites stored behind the counter, displayed to impress patrons serious about carbonation. However, being a collector during these initial days isn't for timid individuals or clumsy ones. Glass is fragile, bottles are weighty, and mishaps are common. The noise of breaking glass accompanies every passionate collector's childhood. One instant, you're displaying your treasure to an impressed companion. The following, you're sweeping fragments beneath the carpet and promising greater caution. Immediately after mourning your casualty, neighbourhood competitions emerge. Who possesses the oldest bottle, the most from various municipalities? The scarcest insignia winners depart with boasting privileges, a hand clasp and potentially a fresh Coca-Cola bottle, commencing the entire cycle again. Bottles become ancestral treasures transferred from one generation to successors, accompanied by tales about daring passage rescues and narrow escapes with the family feline. Some collectors approach things excessively seriously, accumulating cartons in the attic or creating elaborate cataloguing arrangements for their discoveries. Acquaintances and relatives suggest gentle compromises, perhaps contribute several to the church donation sale, yet unsuccessfully. The excitement resides in the pursuit, the gleam of sunlight through flawed glass, the sound and rattle as you reorganize your prizes once more before retiring. As years advance, Coca-Cola bottles transform shape, acquire contours, shed insignias and reproduce by millions. However, for a fortunate minority, the enchantment never resides in the beverage. It exists in the glass, the search and the narrative behind every imperfection and abrasion. Therefore, as you prepare for evening, you might regard your own shelf, recall the pursuit's excitement and grin. Boasting privileges diminish, bottles shatter. However, a quality narrative and slight sticky sentimentality endures eternally. Therefore tonight, as you extend in your bed with climate control, purified water and the privilege of knowing your drinks won't inadvertently cause legal troubles, take a slow, appreciative breath. Reserve a quiet instant for 19th century America's unrestrained optimism. A location where your neighbourhood pharmacist could, with complete seriousness, provide you a cocaine-infused soda glass and designate it medication. Because during that period, survival wasn't merely about preventing illness or outwitting winter. It involved gambling every instance you grabbed a beverage, trusting that your physique and your dentition could manage a daily chemical trial and still reach Sunday worship with your respectability largely preserved. People consumed, conversed, created and strived, sometimes simultaneously, frequently with questionable humour, discernment, and consistently with a sugar surge, and somehow they persevered. However, let's acknowledge something. Those restless, driven individuals were nothing without resilience. They endured discomfort, tedium, and the occasional medical catastrophe, perpetually pursuing the next bottled miracle. They had zero understanding of calories, yet they remained determined to consume as many as achievable, particularly when it tasted like optimism and slightly like hazard. Therefore, as you settle tonight, clean, hydrated, and probably not trembling with chemically generated euphoria, perhaps whisper gratitude to the creators, the soda jerks, and even the excessively passionate advertisers. History may be ridiculous and mildly frightening, yet it's also evidence that humanity is infinitely imaginative, incurably optimistic, and prepared to attempt anything minimally once. Good night. And may your dreams be slightly sweeter and significantly less caffeinated than theirs. Sleep well.